There is fire on the mountain, and nobody seems to be on the run. Oh, there is fire on the mountain top, and no one is running. I wake up in the morning, tell you what I see on my TV screen. I see the blood of an innocent child, and everybody's watching. Now I'm looking out my window, and what do I see? I see an army of a soldier man marching across the street. Hey, hey, Mr. Soldier Man, tomorrow is the day you go to war. Boy, you are fighting for another man's cause, and you don't even know him. Ooh, what did it say to make you so blind to your conscience and reason? Could it be love for your country, or for the gun you use in killing? So there is fire on the mountain, and nobody seems to be on the run. Oh, there is fire on the mountain top, and no one is running. Hey, Mr. Loverman, can I get a chance to talk to you? Cause you are fooling with a dead man's corpse, and you don't know what you do. So you say you have a lover, and you love her like no other. So you buy her a diamond that someone has died on. Don't you think there's something wrong with this? Tell me, who's responsible for what we teach our children? Is it the internet or the stars on television? Why, oh, why? Why, oh, so little Lucy turned 16, and like the movie she's been seeing, she has a lover in her daddy. She can't tell nobody till she makes the evening news. For there is fire on the mountain, and there is nobody to be around. Oh, there is fire on the mountain top, and no one is running. Oh yes, one day the river will overflow.
Where is noise coming from now?
And there'll be nowhere for us to go, and we will run, wishing we had put out the fire. Oh Lord, for there is fire on the mountain, yeah, yeah, and there is nobody. Oh, there is fire on the mountain, and no one is running. So yeah, yeah, yeah. There is fire in Africa, oh, fire everywhere in the sea, yeah, in the air, no one is surrounding. Fire, 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 yeah, yeah. Nobody is surrounding. No, 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 no. Oh, yeah. I'm in chains, you're in chains too. Our uniforms and you are uniforms too. I'm a prisoner, you're a prisoner too, Mr. Jailer. Oh die too. Life is beautiful, don't you think so too, Mr. Jailer? I'm talking to you, Jailer. Stop calling me a prisoner. Let he who is without sin be the first to cast a stone, Mr. Jailer. Mr. Jailer, man. You suppress all my strategies. You oppress every part of me. What you don't know, you're a victim too, Mr. Jailer. Oh, you don't care about my point of view. If I die, another will work for you. So you treat me like a modern slave, Mr. Jailer. I'm talking to you, Jailer. Stop calling me a prisoner. Let he who is without sin be the first to cast the stone, Mr. Jailer. Mr. Jailer, man. You see, if you walking in the marketplace, don't throw stones. Even if you do, you just might hit one of your own. Life is not about your policies all the time, so you better rearrange your philosophies and be good to your fellow man.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of the Dialogue. This is a special series on the state of education in Nigeria, especially basic education. And the series is brought to you by Strictly Speaking in partnership with Premium Times and the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism, WSCIJ, under its regulatory monitoring program, otherwise known as REMOP. I am Bimbo Oloyede, and I am your host for this 6-part series. Once again, welcome. Our discussions so far, and today too, have been based on stories that were written by journalists who were sponsored to observe, investigate, and report on issues related to basic education. And so in this third episode of the Dialogue, I'm going to be joined by a correspondent with the Foundation of Investigative Journalism, FIJ. His name is Gabriel Ogunjobi. And I'm also hoping that the founder of a Kaduna-based initiative, Ninvolve, for children protection, Nafisat Abdul Karim, I'm hoping that she will join us too. We're expecting 2 special guests, and we'll welcome them at the appropriate time. So before we delve into today's discussion, let me share a little background information with you. In 1999, the federal government of Nigeria established the Universal Basic Education Commission, UBEC. It was to ensure uninterrupted access to 9 years of formal education by providing free and compulsory basic education for every child of school-going age. This also aligns with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 4, and that seeks to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all by 2030. Well, as you're all aware, it's just a few weeks before we move into 2022, and that's just 8 years from this 2030 deadline. 13.5 million children out of school in Nigeria, other alarming field reports. It does look as if this ideal might be slipping away. And there are other considerations, there are other dimensions to be considered. So Let's start with a story that was written by Gabriel Ogunjobi. Its activities were centered in Oyo State. Gabriel, welcome to the dialogue.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning. Now, you did an investigative piece. It was titled Farmer Herder Crisis in Oyo has driven over 800 children out of school. You reported that over 200 students from just one Fulani nomadic school in Ga-Seriki, whose school was destroyed during the farmer-herder conflict. Can you please tell us what happened there?
So in way before now, we need to understand that Igangan is one of the ravaged communities in Oyo State that has largely been populated by Fulani herders. There have been crises over time in very many years before now, 10, 20 years, because these nomadic farmer herdsmen are usually there. So between 2020 and 2021, the crisis became very heightened because there were agitations on land control, there were agitations on the dominance of the herders who are called nomadics in the area. And really, we can see that the crisis got to the height of it, to the peak of it after the death of business tycoon, who was from that community, from Igangan. Now, I went to the field to Igangan to investigate how much the crisis has affected schooling there. And I found out that largely all the nomadic schools in Igangan were shut down because of the crisis. Now, the shutting down did not come from the government, basically. Of course, the government still executed the law, the action, but it was basically because of the community response. Sunday Adeyemo, popularly known as Sunday Bo, led a team of youths to Igangan and sent out all the nomadic herders from that community. And because of that, nomadic children automatically left the community. And in 7 of these schools, nomadic schools in Igangan, that have, some of these schools have 200, the list of the schools have 120 school children in them, became out of school automatically. Right as we speak, the schools are still shut down. So that's actually what panned out because of the crisis between the farmers in Igangan and the nomadic herders in that same area. The schools were shut down because they were sending their parents out of the community. And because of the shutdown, over 800 children are still out of school.
So Gabriel, where are they? Where are these children if they're not in school?
These children went to their parents. They went to their parents back to places like Ilorin, to Benin Republic, because I understand that Igangan shares a border between in fact, if you're coming from Ibadan, if you're traveling from Ibadan to Igangan, somebody coming from Benin Republic would likely get to Igangan before you get to Igangan. Igangan is closer to Benin Republic than it is to capital city of Oyo State. It's just about 2 hours from, yes. So most of these elders, the parents, left with their children too, because that was the same question I asked the community. Where, if the schools are shut down, where are the school children? They said many of these school children are actually not children of the farmers, children of the residents, the indigenes of Igangan particularly. They are children of the nomads, because the schools were built for nomadic children to encourage the education of the children. Usually, before now, like you said, that UBEC was founded in 1999. Just to improve education. Nomadic education was also funded years back, about 18 or thereabout, if my memories don't fail me, just to ensure that the education of nomads are catered for, just to ensure that the nomadic children are not going to graze with their parents, with their nomadic parents. So these children were actually going to school before then. In fact, it will shock you that some of these schools are very, very good. They were not just the usually abandoned schools in different states that we have them. They were good schools because they wanted to encourage education of these young school children. But because of the crisis, they went back with their parents. They went back with their parents to different places like Benin Republic, for example, to Ilorin in Kwara State. Back to the farm, back to the grazing, the cattle.
Well, thank you very much, Gabriel, for your answer. I will come back to you. I'll come back to you shortly. I'm hoping that a couple of our special guests will join the call. But in the meantime, since we have begun talking about farmer herder crisis, that was really not meant to be our focus on this program, but it does bring to mind certain things that happened in Benue State, I believe, a couple of years earlier, I think in 2019. Mojid Alabi, are you on the call? Mojid is the head of the development desk at Premium Times. Do you recall, Mojid, first of all, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here as an observer.
As an observer. Well, yes, I'm trying to look through my list of participants, and I have not actually identified a couple of people that I'm hoping. Okay, I can see that one of our special guests is here, and you're very welcome. So, Mojid, apologies, I may come back to you, but let me continue our conversation with a special guest that we have here. He is the registrar and CEO of the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria, TRCN, Professor Segun Ajiboye. Welcome to the Dialogue. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so pleased that you answered the call.
My pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, over the past 2, 3, 4 years, I imagine that your ears must have been ringing with the complaints, with the comments, with stories that you've been hearing from teachers across the country, reports about the lack of safety, about all sorts of things. But how do they feel about this state of affairs? I mean, what do they say to you when they send in their complaints, when they make their feelings known? What do they say?
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank you for bringing me to this platform, the dialogue, to be able to explain the challenges that we have with regards to insecurity in our country, as it affects education generally and teachers most especially. I want to say that is a big challenge actually that we face as a country, and the government actually recognizes the challenge that we have faced. In the past 3 years or thereabout, the government has taken taken cognizance of the dangers posed by insecurity to education system in the country. And perhaps that was why the government actually introduced what we call the Safe School Initiative about 2 years ago. And globally, we are also part of global partnership that is working on safe school system globally. And very recently, the Federal Ministry of Education and the Federal Government of Nigeria hosted jointly an international meeting to x-ray the security challenges in various countries around the world, and most especially as it affects our country, Nigeria, you know, and how we can mitigate this, especially how it affects education and how this can be mitigated. I want to say that we are not sleeping at the level of the federal government, because yes, like you said, teachers are complaining. Even teachers are involved. They are affected. There is 2 ways you look at it: the infected, the infected, and the affected. You will see so many teachers are also affected by this insecurity situation. A lot of teachers have been lost to insurgency in the northeast. A lot of teachers have been attacked and harassed everywhere, all over the country. Even in the northwest, even in the south and the southwest. Very recently, we see teachers being attacked and killed. A teacher was attacked in Nepal recently. Some parents will go to school to attack teachers. A lot of insecurity challenges that are facing our school system, and they pose a big challenge to our basic education system in the country. So we are not, we take cognizance of this. We actually recognize it because we are affected. We are affected, okay? And so it is a big problem. And I think as a country, what we are trying to do is to see what we can do to be able to mitigate the challenge. At the level of Federal Ministry of Education, That was why even the idea of fencing all unity schools in Nigeria and urging the state governments as well to do same for all schools in the country, that our schools will be well fenced so that we can provide better security for our children. Because look, yes, during your intro, I heard you mentioning a very huge figure of out-of-school children in Nigeria. Yes, you may be right. We face the challenge of out-of-school children, and this has also been compounded by the level of insecurity in our country. It has really compounded that, because no one will want to release the children to the school system that is not safe. Okay? And that is why it's a big challenge to us at the level of Federal Ministry of Education and at the level of federal government. How do we mitigate this? And this is what we have been working around to see what can be done to make sure that we create a safe environment for our children. These are our children. These are our future as a people, as a country. And that's why it's very important for us to be able to interrogate this issue and see the way forward. And I believe very strongly from our interrogations and discussion today, we'll be able to come up with some other useful ideas that we can take forward as a country to be able to address this challenge. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof. I'm glad you mentioned the Safe Schools Declaration, because it's almost ironic that Nigeria was one of the first group of 37 countries to endorse this Safe Schools Declaration. And yet, you know, here we are. And I am hoping, just as you are, that before our conversation is over, we might be able to come up with some more ideas, you know, that the Federal Ministry of Education could contemplate. But whilst you were talking, and thank you, I will come back to you, we were joined on the call by Nafisat Abdul Karim. Now, Nafisat is based in Kaduna, and she is a producer and a presenter, and she also founded an initiative called Involve Child Awareness Protection. So she runs a program once a week. And Nafisat, I think, first of all, let me say welcome. Thank you for joining the call. Obviously, from your base, you would know more than anybody else, really, about the challenges that educational establishments have had in Kaduna State and, of course, other states in the Federation. Now, since you've been producing your program, I think it's on Karama FM, if I'm correct. Since you've been producing that program,
yes, ma'am.
What have you found out about the situation of insecurity? Because I'm sure that there must be a lot of information that you have at your fingertips.
Thank you, Ma. Good morning, all. I'm sorry for joining late. I was having a problem with the network here. So my name is Nafisa Abdul Karim. The organization, yes, the initiative is Nigeria Involve for Child Protection. And the radio program is basically on child protection, issues surrounding child protection issues, abuse, assault, education, and related issues. And I think since we started recording, Kaduna State, as you know, has recorded numerous and some of the highest cases of the challenges impacting education as a result of insecurity, farmers' herders crisis, banditry, terrorism, and related issues. And the challenges are the numerous challenges. And some of the challenges is this. Children are forced out of schools, as you know. Not long ago, schools were reopened, schools were closed as a result of the insecurity. And now what happens is this, after schools have resumed, some schools are still closed, especially in communities still affected by this insecurity. In the recent report released on the state of insecurity by the government in Kaduna State, about 13 local governments are still affected or are the most affected in the ongoing insecurity challenges. And of these 13 local governments, they comprise about half of students and pupils in primary schools, which we know is the basic required education that every child must get, primary school up to junior secondary school, 9 years education. Now the implication is this. Most of these communities are farmers or pastoralists. So when their communities are affected, it means their means of livelihood are curtailed. These children are forced to move from their own communities into host communities, which means they have to abandon their studies. Moving into host communities, you realize, especially from the report conducted, the REMOP report, most of the schools or public schools are used as settlements for displaced people. Now, it means so the pupils are moving away from conflicted communities where they have to abandon their studies, and host communities also have to stop some of their education system because their schools are being used to cater or to shelter people displaced from violence and other insecurity challenges. The problem is this: children stop going to school while other schools while other pupils continue to go to school. So when they do resume, it means there's a gap in their education. What happens with this gap? Who covers up what has been missed within this period? And what happens is this deepens inequality in our educational system, social inequality, since this affects, just like you mentioned, it affects the future of these children. So now the result is children are also forced to move out of their communities to go in search of, since the economy of their parents are affected, most of the time, it boils down to the children to now cater or to provide for their parents or their families. And most of the time, the burdens goes down to the girls because the boys have to go for manual labor and other related labors and all that. But the girls are forced to move into either urban areas or other communities to work either as domestic helps, child labor, sometimes to hawk and other related child labor cases. I know there was a situation of, there was a woman, they were among the displaced people from Katsina State. You are aware Katsina is affected by insecurity. So she had to leave Katsina to Kaduna in search of other economic opportunities to sustain her family. So she's not educated, which means she has to resort to domestic labor, either domestic work to sustain herself and her family. But she couldn't find work because most people will not give her work. They prefer to employ or to give jobs to young girls because they are easy to exploit and easy to abuse and manipulate. So the problem is, yes. So now the problem is there is this certain discrimination whereby even if parents don't want their children to work, they are forced to make their children work because nobody will, and most people won't employ them. They would rather employ these young girls. And what happens is these children are faced with abuse because I can remember there's there are about 2 cases that were reported about 2 girls were abused, domestic abuse violence. They were
sorry, Nafisat. Yes, you're explaining a situation that is multi-layered from what you're saying, because now we have we even when the children are ready to go back to school, the classrooms have actually been utilized as shelters, which creates a completely different set of problems altogether. Well, thank you very much. I'll come back to you. This is the Dialogue Education Series. We're highlighting the state of education, particularly basic education in Nigeria. And the Dialogue is sponsored by the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism and brought to you by Strictly Speaking and Premium Times. Now, we want to acknowledge those who are following the Dialogue on other platforms. So if you have questions, if you have comments, please feel free to post. We would like to take some questions, if you have them, and we'll also be able to refer to your comments as we go along. Okay, thank you. Now, is Commissioner Frank Odita, has he joined the call yet? Commissioner Odita, are you there?
It's been finding it difficult to join. I don't know whether he has been able to join. The network where he is in data stage.
Okay, so he's having problems there. All right. I do hope that we'll be able to speak with him before the program is over. Prof, let me come back to you. Can we talk maybe about teachers' welfare? Because, in recent times, there's been quite a lot of talk about the take-home pay of professors in our tertiary institutions. So if professors are complaining, I'm not quite sure what we should be saying about teachers. Perhaps you can shed a little bit of light on teachers' welfare, because this is also another aspect of the challenges that that teachers are going through.
Thank you very much. I think, yes, I really appreciate this component of discussing the issue of the teacher welfare, because when you look at the insecurity, even labor issues can lead to insecurity. You know, that is the reality. You know, when we are talking about insecurity, we can look at it from all ramifications. When we look at the teacher welfare, it's very critical to the issue of insecurity that we are discussing. Because when you have a group of people that are not being, their welfare is not being taken care of, their salaries cannot take them home and things like that, we have challenges with regards to some states not being able to pay teachers as and when due. It compounds the issue of insecurity in the country. Okay, yes, when teachers' salaries are not paid, it compounds the issue of insecurity in the country. I want to say that, look, that is why we appeal to those states where teachers are being owed salaries. Look, you journalists can actually identify them. You can easily identify, and you should be able to follow them up. We should be able to follow up these states where teachers are being owed salaries of over some months. It compounds the issue of insecurity. Hunger actually breeds insecurity. Okay, and that is why it is imperative that we have to also look at it. How do we mitigate the issue of teachers not being paid over time so that we'll be able to reduce the issue of insecurity in our land? Okay, I want to say that at the level of the federal government, the president of the country late last year, precisely on the 5th of October, which was the World Teachers Day, approved some welfare packages for some Nigerian teachers. I'm very sure that you are familiar with all those welfare packages. We don't need to begin to rehearse them here. We have the issue of elongation of the years of service of Nigerian teachers. We have the issue of the allowances approved for Nigerian teachers who are teaching in rural areas and difficult subject areas. Okay, these are some of the things that Mr. President actually approved. And then rural housing scheme for teachers and some other issues like that, some other approvals, some other welfare packages like that. We need to encourage our teachers. Look, insecurity is actually compounded. There is a nexus. There is a nexus between labor matters and insecurity. When the welfare of workers are not adequately taken care of, it compounds the problem of insecurity in the land. And in this case, when our teachers are not, their welfare are not being taken care of, it compounds the issue of insecurity in our country. And these are the people we want to provide solution. We want the teachers to be able to provide solution through appropriate education of our children. And so if we want them to do this, they need to be happy themselves. They need to be well fed. They need to be well taken care of. And that is why we feel that the welfare of the teacher is also paramount in providing solution to the issue of insecurity in the land. It's a big challenge. And I think the journalists will actually help us, and they're using this platform also to advocate. Look, let us look at some of those states. Let us follow them up. There are some states that have not been paid teachers for the past 8 months, 10 months. Okay, there are some states where they do selective payment to teachers. If you don't pay teachers very well, how do you want them to be able to help you in resolving the issue of insecurity in the land? You are rather compounding the problem of insecurity. And that is why we feel that our teachers have to be well taken care of. Their welfare should be germane to the government to make sure that we resolve this. At the level of the federal government, I want to say that efforts are always being put in place. But you know that education is on concurrent list. Even when you are discussing this basic education, I was just looking at it. I said, yes, when the federal government through UBEC has put certain funding in place, you will expect some states to come and pay counterpart fund to be able to access the funding at the level of UBEC. But you don't see some states coming up. Some states are in the arrears of several years. And that's why you have billions of naira lying down fallow at the level of UBEC that have not been assessed by the states. This compounds the insecurity situation in the land. And so we want us to address these issues so that we can change the narratives both at the federal level and even at the state level. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much too, Prof. I think as you were talking, I was thinking about one or two other ways by which teachers could be prepared for the situations that they might find themselves in. So I honestly, I don't think that we should limit ourselves to thinking only about the welfare package, as very important, as it is. The truth also is that teachers are actually working in many places at their personal risk. And the truth also is that we need many more teachers, as part of the education system. So I am wondering, is the TRCN working with the National Commission for Colleges of Education, NCCE? Is there any partnership agreement you have, or have you had discussions about including new elements into the curriculum that will prepare teachers for emerging realities such as safety and insecurity? Because truthfully too, these challenges are not going to go away overnight.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me say that there is a synergy between the, even among the agencies under the Federal Ministry of Education, working with UBEC, under the umbrella of UBEC. The current ES of UBEC has been able to put a platform together where all the agencies that are connected with basic education are working with them. And there's a synergy. I want to say that even in the review of curricula of colleges of education in Nigeria, they started the review about 2 years ago. The National Commission for Colleges of Education actually has been able to put in place certain things to be able to change some of the aspects of the curricula to reflect current reality. And part of what we have done, for example, at the level of TRCN, is to incorporate the component we call the professional standards for Nigerian teachers in that curriculum, in the new curriculum. We have incorporated the aspect of professional standards for Nigerian teachers. We have been able to incorporate the aspect of code of conduct, or what we call code of ethics for Nigerian teachers towards mitigating these insecurity challenges that we are facing, and to make sure to create the consciousness of the Nigerian teachers with regards to the insecurity that we talk about. So these are some of the things that we are trying to do. We are working in partnership with UBEC. We are working in partnership with all the agencies. And if you look at even NERDC, the Nigeria Educational Research and Development Council, the NERDC has also come out with a new curriculum on security education.
Okay.
That is the real, yes. The NERDC has developed a new curriculum on security education. The aim is to prepare the teachers and the learners to sensitize them and to prepare them towards the challenges of insecurity. It's a new curriculum that has just been developed on security education for the country, to be taught within the ambit of social studies and some other subjects, related subjects. This is a new development. It's a new development. It's to show that we are also aware of the challenges and we are doing something to be able to address it. So I want to tell Nigerians that, look, we are conscious of some of these challenges, and that's why that new curriculum was developed. It has just been developed, and we have experts who are working on teachers' guidelines and some other aspects of it to make sure the implementation is very smooth at the level of Nigeria Educational Research and Development Council. So these are part of the thing that we are doing at the federal level to ensure that we address all these challenges we talk about.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that information. I'm wondering whether you haven't actually just given us a scoop about NERDC and its new curriculum on security and safety measures. Thank you. Yeah. Gabriel, I've not forgotten that you are there. When you were writing your report, I did mention not too long ago that something similar had happened in Benue. I am interested in knowing whether the stakeholders that you spoke with and explained the situation as it were at that time, what was the response of stakeholders to the question of this crisis?
Yeah, so I spoke with teachers in Ibadan who specifically told me that when the crisis happened and they had to shut down the school, based on the response of the community people there, they were relocated to schools within the safe areas, schools that have fencing, schools that were secured, so to say. These teachers were relocated. But unfortunately, these children were not relocated because obviously they went with their parents to fend for themselves. And I also, that's so part of the stakeholders I spoke with were teachers. And I also spoke with the chairman of the teachers in Oyo State. And he told me specifically that they had to prioritize the security of their teachers and their children. As much as education was important,
Safety was also very important.
Safety was very, very important. It was very key. So they had to, the pressure was there for them to shut down the school, and they did. So the justification was that security had to be catered for first. And he was hoping that, because as of that time, it was going through, it was towards the end of the term for them then, and he was hoping that by the time they resumed for the next term, they would be able to join them. But I followed up, and I knew very well, as at today, the schools, nomadic schools in Ogogon are still shut. As at today, he gave me the assurance that they were going to be open after they resumed for the next term. But I followed up after then, and I can confirm that yes, the schools are still shut down. So the basic issue is that we know that for sure that the security, which was the reason for the shutdown, has still not been addressed. In July 2021, yes, July 2021, after the eviction in January, late January, July 2021, some assailants still went back to Igongon, and they killed a lot of people. They killed 11 people. That same midnight, they severely injured 9 other people in that same community. So the security problem was still very much there. And up to now, the security problem is still there. So the schools that were shut down because of insecurity are still shut down.
Still shut.
Yes.
But when you were talking, you did mention about teachers being moved to schools where there were fences in place.
Yes.
Now, I don't know whether those fences had been there for a period of time, or whether those fences were actually a response to the Safe Schools Declaration. Because we need to really find out how effective is this, and how much of this the Safe Schools Declaration is being implemented.
Well, to be fair on the part of on everybody, some of these fences were done as response to the security challenges in those, and not even the Ibarakwa area alone, Okiogun axis and Ibarakwa axis. The two regions are very, very close. And the Okiogun axis and the region and Ibarakwa region, they had the similar problem with Fulani Eda crisis, Fulani Eda and Farmer Eda crisis. So some of these fences that were done in these two areas were response to the insecurity problem they had there.
All right.
Some other schools still deal with that issue. Some schools still do not have fences. Some schools, of course, from investigations, I can confirm that some of these schools still do not have securities. They still do not have vigilantes attached to them.
Okay.
I can say for a fact that very many schools in Okiogun still have that problem, because the problem happening in the problem of farmer Eda crisis is not as prevalent as that in Okiogun as much as it is in the Ibarakwa axis. So they seem to be going to bed that, they are comfortable that even without fences, even without some vigilantes attached to schools, they can still do very fine. So some of these schools, a large number of schools in Okiogun, are still having problem with implementing the Safe School Declaration.
But at least from what you've said, some effort is actually being made. Nafisat, in your part of the country, in Kaduna State, can you talk a little bit about the response that you have had from stakeholders in education when some of the issues that you've highlighted had been brought to their attention?
In some of the funds, looking at the challenge for students whose education has been disrupted or who stopped going to school at some point, I think government, in collaboration with non-governmental organizations and international organizations, created a kind of extra lesson in some schools. Some schools have extra lesson for pupils to catch up with what they have missed while they were out of school during the period where their school had to be shut down due to insecurity. That's one. And secondly, there is some schools have a process where they have school-based, so PTAs and committees for vigilante groups. That is kind of school community-based support where they can respond and then support schools should there be or where cases of insecurity may or might occur. So far, those are the responses I know regarding these two particular issues in response to insecurity in Kaduna.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just say quickly that this is the Dialogue education series, and we're highlighting the state of education, particularly basic education in Nigeria. Prof, let me come back to you. We're actually on our last lap now, but fortunately you are here with us, and I want to take as much advantage of your presence as I possibly can. If you were given,
Thank you.
If you were given a free hand and you were told, okay, now this is what we would like to know, let me put it that way, that we would like to know 3 key steps that need to be taken to address the state of insecurity in our schools. What would those 3 key areas be?
Well, thank you very much. Before I go to the 3 areas, let me report to Nigerians that even in implementing the Safe School Initiative, that all unity schools in the country presently, all unity schools, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, that all our unity schools have now been fenced. Yes, and those ones that are yet to be completed are ongoing as we talk now, because the federal government actually approved a budget last year to fence all unity schools in the country to increase the level of security in those institutions. Well, if you talk of safe school, well, I have to make our schools safer. Well, I will talk of the role of the government, what the government need to do. In those days, we also used to have security men in schools, although their role during the military was discipline in those days. These days, are security personnel in the schools to make sure that we ensure that we increase the level of security of our children, because they are our future, and that's why their security is more important to us. So government may begin to think of how to deploy, security personnel to all the schools so that we'll be able to have a heightened level of security in our school. Another thing that we need to do, second thing, which is also very critical, is the use of technology. And I've said this at different fora. It's important now that we now have to deploy technology to improve on security in all our schools. Believe you me, if you go to some other countries, I have been to Kenya very recently. I was in Kenya, I think about a year or thereabout ago, and I was impressed by the situation when you will see a child coming to school in the morning, clocking in somewhere. You have to touch something. It's a technology to say that you are present. And then when you also clock out. When you are clocking, you clock in and you clock out. The same thing the teachers will do. They will clock in and they will clock out. That we also enhance. We need to use security. We need to use technology to enhance. Let's leverage more on the use of technology to enhance security in our school system. I know we can do it. Some of these technologies are very cheap. They are not so expensive, and they can even be developed locally. They can be developed locally. And that is what I think we should do. Let's leverage on the use of the personnel, the use of security personnel, and let's leverage more on the use of technology. This technology is available. We have the CCTV that can be mounted in the school, perimeter, apart from perimeter fencing, you have the CCTV that you can mount in the various schools and to be able to monitor what is going on around the school environment. And so it's very important. So number 1, we deploy security men. Number 2, we leverage more on technology. And number 3, our curricula will have to change. Some of our children also, maybe we need to, yes, in changing the curricula, part of the thing we need to do is to teach our children about this physical training in terms of combat, a little bit of combat training and things like that. In some other countries, these are done. so that the children themselves will be able to defend themselves in certain situations. When you talk of rape situation, when you talk of other challenges that are not very minor, the children will be able to defend themselves when they have this combat training. Okay, so I think we need to look at our curricula and where we need to work on it to ensure that our children also get a little bit of education. And I believe very strongly that the security education curriculum that has just been developed will be able to provide this kind of solution and equip our children for better response in security situations. Because that is the idea. You create security awareness in the children to create that consciousness that they need to defend themselves. They need to be able to stand for themselves. There are certain things they too can do. Okay, if some security people are putting and you just throw a banger, for goodness sake, they will know that, you know, they may think it's a gunshot, and then that will repel them in certain regard. Okay, so there are certain things that we need to do, and we could use curriculum to be able to do that for our children and even the teachers. So if we are able to quickly tackle those three things, and more importantly, use technology, and I will re-emphasize that, because technology we provide 90-something% of the solution to some of these insecurity challenges that we are facing. And that is going to be my own idea. Thank you very much.
I appreciate all that you said. And I'm sure that many people who are watching and listening have taken note. Security personnel, technology, a change in the curriculum to include things like physical combat training, and then the implementation of the new elements of security in our curriculum in the schools. Okay, thank you very much, Prof. I appreciate your contributions. Now, Gabriel, let me come back to you, and I'm going to ask you the same question, really. What would you like to see?
Well, I think the Prof has said it all. But more importantly, I also think that we should make the access to classes as good as possible. We need to work on the access. Most of these schools do not have good infrastructures. Most of the roads are very, very bad, deplorable. And so when we talk about the crisis that these people have, a lot of times the children are with the parents, the teachers and the children are waylaid on the way to the school. There are a lot of issues on the path to school. Okay. In Ogun State, for example, Yewa area, Kitu constituency, there are a lot of schools in the agrarian areas that are very deplorable. The roads to the, even for me as a reporter going there, I know how much stress I go through. Going to those areas, going on bikes in 1 hour, 2 hours, and you just, before you dash into the schools, and you just see the selected school somewhere like a place for the goats or anything, any sort of animals. But this is actually a school. So we need to, I think we need to work on the infrastructures of schools, the schools themselves, the roads to the school. If we make them as safe as possible, then the access to education is guaranteed that way. That's for one. Number two, I also think that training the teachers on, just like the Prof said, the teachers and the children on physical defense mechanism, such that when there is any resistance, any aggression from outside or within, they're able to at least manage the situation before they get more help. Also, if you're talking about the security, we need to bear in mind that the security are also not gods. They don't have any extra funding. The government really needs to fund the vigilantes. Some of these vigilantes are not motivated to work. So even if we have some vigilantes deployed to an area, they are not motivated because they're not paid. In Igongo, for example, I understand that the Igongo community itself has about 5 or 6, it's not up to 10 vigilantes that are under the government payroll. But for the past 4 months as we speak, they are not paid. So vigilantes that are under payroll that are not even paid, you expect them to go guide schools, even though the schools are accessed by their children, they are not really motivated to do the work because they are not paid. So I believe that the funding of the government needs to be really increased in terms of education for the vigilantes, the access to the road, to the schools, and the schools need to really be managed properly. The infrastructure needs to be developed for the children to be able to access the schools. And one thing that it has really been on my mind to talk about, that maybe we're not talking about it for some certain reasons, is that some of these teachers in agrarian areas, if we watch the patterns, some of them, they have another work they do because they know that the salaries they get are not so much. They use farming to augment their living. But you will find out that because they are product of the communities too, their schools, their farms are also affected by the crisis going on in their areas. So to say, they lose livelihood because of the crisis. So I take it that if we solve the security problem we have in these agrarian areas, we largely solve the problem of education, with access to education. Because at that time, the teachers who are also farmers on part-time basis will be motivated to teach in classes, will be motivated to go to classes and teach comfortably. So those are my feedbacks.
Okay, thank you. That is an aspect that really we have not talked about, and I think it's important because Gabriel, it's like double jeopardy, really. Not getting much as a teacher, not getting much from the other area of income, which is farming. So it's not surprising that they're not really well motivated. So Nafisat, I would like to ask you a similar question, but perhaps let me put it in a different way. You're a media person. You are interested enough to have a program on a weekly basis looking at various aspects of these educational challenges. Maybe you can come up with some recommendations that our colleagues in the media can take up or think of doing to throw more light on these challenges and equally come up with some solutions and recommendations. Nafisat?
Thank you. For our colleagues in the media, one thing I would like to say is most of the time, journalists are familiar with the experiences of the people in the societies and in the communities. And I think amplifying more sometimes, because due to limited space or time in our various media, whether airtime or space, there are important issues, especially human aspect, that we tend to suppress to focus on more issues that we feel are what is current or ongoing or what people need to know. I think aside from meeting up with current deadline of what should go on air or what should go on the front page and all that, there should also be opportunity whereby other things we've experienced and documenting solutions and alternatives, put this in the channel in such a way that it can reach a government, the appropriate authorities, where they can document and then use that to profile solutions appropriately to the needs of the people in those communities. That's one. And then please, I would also like to speak on the solution provided by Prof and then supported by Mr. Gabriel on providing a kind of training for pupils or learners in schools. It is a good idea. I also support that, but I think the focus is on minimizing risk, minimizing harm. It's just an opportunity for pupils and students to not defend themselves, but protect themselves, to provide response. The key should be how do we respond when such threats happen? You realize that we have experienced the same thing over time when attackers or bandits or terrorists just go to school and round up students and abduct them. So what should happen when something happens? What should pupils do? What should teachers do? Who should be the first responders? Where do they go to? Where do they hide? And I think that can be achieved working with the appropriate security agencies and coming up with the best and appropriate method to provide this kind of training needed. So I think the focus is minimizing risk, not for pupils or learners to defend themselves, because these are armed people and these are defenseless children. So there is little that they can do. So the focus is providing solution, channeling solution as realized in the communities to the appropriate channels. And then secondly, timely response from security agencies and government, because this will give the students and the teachers confidence that they are protected. If there is timely response, they can always feel like they can get help at the appropriate time. And secondly, thirdly, how to respond. Because when crises happen, children are confused, teachers are confused. which further increases the harm and the hazards. So the focus is on how to minimize risk and harm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nafisat. I think just before we say goodbye, Prof, I would like you to have the last word. We have heard about vigilante groups being in schools, and we have also heard, or just heard, about minimizing risk. When you talked about security personnel, what kind of security personnel do you actually have in mind? Because we've also had discussions before today about the creating the balance between children who are frightened of going to school because there are armed security personnel within the school premises, and not going to school at all. So I don't know, perhaps you can just make a comment about the nature of the personnel, security personnel that should be within schools. I don't know what the SSD recommends, the Safe Schools initiative, rather. I don't know what it recommends, but perhaps you can just give us a last word on that.
Okay. Let me say that yes, we are not talking of militarizing our schools. We are not advocating for militarizing our schools by bringing back military to the school system, and the policemen in the country are even overstretched, given the number that we have and the level of insecurity in the land. I think all of us, we agree together that the civilian people, what they call civilian JTF or whatever name they are giving the civil defense.
Civil defense.
We have the civil defense group. I think the civil defense will be more apt. Yeah, the civil defense corps will be more apt in monitoring and in policing our schools better. I think the civil defense, their role is actually to monitor government properties and things like that. And I think they will serve the right purpose if we deploy them to monitor our children in our schools. I think we are going to be doing our country a good service. It's going to be something that is welcome. If we can use the civil defense to be able to do this, they have actually to monitor properties, government properties, whether they are pipelines and other things like that, and to provide surveillance and vigilance in monitoring government institutions. And so I think the civil defense will be appropriate to be deployed in this kind of regard. Yes, we may need to employ more civil defense personnel to be able to do this and train them specially to be able to take care of our children in school so that they will not also go there to be part of the problem, rather they will be part of the solution. But I think the civil defense will be appropriate for this. They are being paid by the federal government of Nigeria, and we should be able to assign them, allocate them to the various schools so that they'll be able to provide these services that we talk about. So I believe very strongly in the utilization of the civil defense, not the police, not the military, but let us use the civil, as the name implies, civil. And I believe very strongly, they have always been very civil in their activities, so they will be able to discharge that responsibility. The training I was talking about the combat training, is generally referred to as martial arts training.
Martial arts.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's important that we keep our children. Look, even when we should not wait until they go for NYC and other things, NYC camp and other things like that before they are trained in martial arts. I think we should begin to train them even at the lower level. If we get to some other countries, this is what they do. This is what they do, including the US. Okay? Because as we have our own insecurity in the school here, they also have their own. If you know the number of guns that enter into American schools daily, illegally, you will be surprised. And so they have their own challenges as well. Illegal guns going into schools. They have their own challenges. Okay? And so many lives have been lost to that as well. But part of the thing, the solution is also to provide the children with what you call, both the children and the teachers, with martial art training. And I think if we do this, it will be the better for it for our country. Once again, let me thank you for bringing me to the platform. I have to run now, and I really appreciate you, and I appreciate what you are doing. Thank you, and I appreciate the coordinator of this particular edition. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. We're grateful that you were able to spare time to join us on the dialogue today. We're all running, actually, not just you, sir. We've come to the end of the dialogue for today. I want to thank you very much, Professor Segun Ajiboye, Registrar and CEO of the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. I want to thank my colleagues, Gabriel Ogunjobi, correspondent with the Foundation of Investigative Journalism. And also I want to thank the founder of the Kaduna-based initiative, the Involve for Child Protection, Nafisat Abdul Karim. You've all made very, very valuable contributions today, and we appreciate your thoughts and insight. And I think we also must thank those of you who have been watching and posting your various comments. I believe it's been an informative edition of the dialogue, and it's also been my pleasure to host it. Don't forget, the dialogue is powered by Strictly Speaking, Premium Times, and the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism. Please join me again next week for another edition. That will be our 4th episode. My name is Bimbo Oloyede, and I'll see you again next week at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. See you then.